For the shop, I've needed a good source of distilled water. I have various things that we use distilled water for in the shop: anodizing, plating, and of course makeup water for our coolant. I've been using an aquarium reverse osmosis system, and it works okay, but distilled water, I believe, is ultimately the purest way to go. So I jumped online to figure out what a distillation unit might cost, and I was kind of shocked. The cheapest was about $850 for a manual setup. I also learned that distillers are not very fast. 8 or 10 gallons a day, pretty typical. So I started watching Craigslist, and I picked up a unit for 20 bucks. I didn't know the capacity, whether it was automatic or manual, but I figured for 20 bucks it'd be worth the gamble. I couldn't find much information about the model that I had purchased, other that in the mid-1970s, Paul Giovaggi began to manufacture distillers under the name International Rotary Company. As the distiller industry grew, his company developed into Durastill Incorporated that we know today. After taking the unit apart, it looked fairly simple to make the conversion. I just needed an automated valve to feed it. So I went online and purchased a solenoid valve and all the other fittings that were required to put this together. And so here you can see more or less the process of the assembly. The camera footage isn't perfect, but you'll get the idea of how it went together. Just out of frame, I'm hooking up the solenoid coil to the float switch, which is a single pull, double throw, snap action switch. And I figured that this would work, that when the float was low, that it would turn on the solenoid and fill, and when it was high, it would turn off the element. We'll discover later that this didn't work, and I'll talk about it exactly why my assumption was wrong. But for now, we're going to test it, and the float switch worked fine, and it would run a cycle. Everything looked good at this point, but it wasn't until I had run through a complete cycle that I discovered that it would just stop, and I would have to shake the machine to get it to go again. So after a little bit of research about snap action switches, I found that they all have differential travel, a little dead spot between the two poles, and this caused the element to turn off but didn't turn on the solenoid. I needed to figure out why. Looking at the Durastill manual, I found that there was an upper switch and a lower switch. So I ordered a second switch, which is a Cherry E14, and once it arrived I needed to get the mounting screws done, and so I figured I'd show you how to cut soft screws off using the wire strippers. Some of you may have seen the holes that are on the strippers. You simply wind the screw in and then snap it off and then wind it out, and you're left with a workable screw ready to use. Rather than the bolted extension that the manual for the Durastill showed, I opted to just simply spot weld an extension onto the existing switch. Hopefully this will work and that it won't bend over time, but we'll see. So far it's been working out well, and it was a quick way to fabricate it. The only drawback is you can see that I had to kind of bend the switch leaf into a weird position in order to get clearance into the spot welder. I probably should have been wearing gloves because on these small parts you're right up in the business where it's hot. The next step is to trim the extension to length. I like to leave the extra when I'm welding or soldering a small part like this. It gives you something to hold on to. With the new limit switch installed in its location, all that's left is to play with the float a little bit and make sure that the leaf is bent in the correct position to cause the distiller to fill to the appropriate height. During normal operation now, the element will stay on continuously unless for some reason the solenoid stops feeding water. Did I mention distillers are slow? Drip, drip, drip. That's the pace it goes. I've had the distiller up and running for about a week and it's been working great. Makes about the advertised 8 gallons per day, and that's 24 hours. I don't leave it unattended at this point, but I intend to maybe sometime in the future. Thanks for watching.